the good advice on handling people and process?
Use the age-old analog, meaning call someone out of band if you're doing a financial transfer.
So that's some good advice. All right.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, give me some bad advice on handling people and process.
If you're running with emotions, I recommend turning that emotional dial up to 11.
Ooh, that is some bad advice. Patrick,
big or
what
go
up him?
home.
Give me some worse
What up?
advice.
Send out everyone gets $1,000 bonus on your security simulation at the time of your HR review.
That is awful.
Yeah.
All right, let's begin this.
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
Hey, everybody, welcome to today's Super Cyber Friday. Our topic is hacking people and process. As you saw from Patrick and Steve at the beginning, it's an hour of critical thinking about how to prevent hackers from taking advantage of how we work. All right, our guests, you just saw them. That's Steve Hindle. He's the CIO and CISO of Mad Mobile. He is desperately going to try not to swear on today's show. And also Patrick Haar, CEO of SlashNext, who has promised me he'll swear extra for today's show. Our sponsor is SlashNext. They've been a phenomenal sponsor of the CISO series, and we're going to learn a little bit about what they do, which is pretty darn cool, which all sort of works together with our conversation about people and process. All right, 7 different ways to participate. Here is our bad idea. It's kind of a little bit of a twist. Best example of security theater. So it looks good, but it's a really bad process. Very interesting to know. So your best example of security theater, just label it bad idea. And then we also want to know your 10% better tips, submit process tips to improve security. And then all the other stuffs, vote in the polls. If you want to come on camera, just say, bring me on, ask a question. We want your questions. There's a button at the bottom of the screen, and vote for your favorite question as well. All right, here's today's schedule. You just saw it. Good advice, bad advice, worse advice. We want your bad ideas. We want your 10% better tips. We will play the public interest. We'll put the poll live for the best example of security theater. Remember, that's our bad idea. We haven't played this in a while. We'll play the game That Totally Sucks. And then vote for your best tips. And then we'll play Department of Yes, last question, final advice. And then we will do our meetup, which will happen at the end of the hour. And I'm looking at you, people who have never joined our meetups in the past. Come join us. It's a lot of fun. You get to meet everybody and have face-to-face conversations, kind of like a party. It's simulated. You sort of jump in and out of conversations. It's fun. Stick around for that. All right. Our next show is going to be next Friday, February 10th. It is Hacking Your Security Program, an hour of critical thinking of what you should do next to improve your security posture. Guess what? You can register for that right now without leaving this chat. That's important. The link at the bottom of the screen will allow you to do that. It will be there for most of this show. Remember, if you do that early, I didn't put this week's winner, and I forgot this week's winner. But we do have a winner of this week. I completely forgot to put their name in. But we do have a winner from this week, and I will mention it next week. My apologies for forgetting that person's name and forgetting to put it in the discussion. All right, let's jump into our discussion about people and process. Let's just so we can set the stage here, Patrick. What do we mean when we're talking about process, and why is process important to security?
Yeah. As I think I was a guest on the show before, right? It's all about people, process, and then ultimately also some product. But the reason why,
by the way, this audience totally knows. Yes.
Yeah, we all know the 3 Ps, and I think when we dive into process, the reason why that's important, no matter what you do on the people side, and no matter what you do on the product side, there's still going to be a process element. Mm-hmm. And it really comes down to, right, make process part of your security program. We all know process is typically designed around security awareness training. I would say that in of itself is not sufficient. I did mention also implementing out-of-band processes. When you're doing something, as an example, you get a business email compromise and it asks you to transfer some wire information. Always do that secondary out-of-band multi-factor authentication. And as I highlighted in this case, put that analog process in place. So I think the net, right, is you do have to develop a comprehensive security process when you're certainly dealing on our side in the phishing, social engineering, which is effectively the big bulk of attacks today.
Mm-hmm. So Steve, what are some processes that people do not think about when it comes to security? Like, it just doesn't even cross their mind. It's like, oh, this has got to be on people's, radar.
You often get that juxtaposition between different departments, different mindsets. So your
point.
process pieces have to have stakeholder buy-in across the business, and they have to be tailored to the business. That's the biggest gap that most people see. They'll follow best practice, but your HR organization may have a totally different perspective of what should happen or not happen in the event of, let's say, security awareness. We talked about it before. They may look at it punitive instead of rewarding. You should be, building an army of security champions versus building an army of people who really hate receiving those phishing testing emails. So processes have to be built to the business. Stakeholders have to be bought in, and all carrot, no stick.
I like that. Processes built to the business. All right. And please let me remind everybody, get your questions in. Okay. So, I'll just say this is one of the things that we're obsessed with. We're obsessed with process really from a productivity standpoint. And I got to assume most companies are obsessed with process from a productivity standpoint. And my feeling is those two can kind of go hand in hand because security is part of productivity. Yes, Patrick?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, I've been in security far too long, a little bit of gray hair, going back to my Novell days. Right. And I used to say people are people, not IP addresses. And I say this because at the end of the day, even back then, it could be a full lockdown scenario. You never allow anyone to do anything. That's, quote, the best security posture. I'd still argue it's probably not. But obviously that shuts off all the productivity. And particularly if we look at the world today, it is about using everything to do what you need to do. And so you really have to adapt your product part of the equation from security, but also the process. We're just talking about adapting to the lines of business and the type of business you do. I also think you have to adapt to the types of or the ways people work today as we've gone remote, certainly. So how do you, again, enable that employee to be productive, yet still have effectively security controls built around that? It's a tough problem, particularly when you're not just even using your own business type of devices, right? We got BYOD, we have other aspects that are kind of put into this mix. So I think the net of this, right, you do have to be extremely conscious in the security side to make sure not lock down so much of the people side and the process side. We actually prevent the productivity.
Yeah, and it is this incredibly gentle balance, and there isn't just it's taking you, Steve. How do you kind of are there sort of maybe rules of thumb? Like, let me throw this kind of concept out there. Is there a process to review a process that's saying this is productive and secure? Like, is there a way that we can put our own checks and balances in this?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about people and processes. Everybody's focused on the new shinies. They're focused on the tech, and you never implement technology or build technology without doing user acceptance testing, UAT. Really important. The user experience of that technology is everything. But it's the same for security and processes. When you're building a security process that says we're going to do things a certain way, if you're not front and center in your mind of how does that affect my user base, is that improving the user experience or not? Because we've gone a long way from being the department of no, or if I go back 20 years in my career, we were labeled the sales prevention organization. Nobody wants to be
that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, that was thrown out at our team a long time ago. But nobody ever wants to be that. You have to enable the business, but you have to also support your people. I came from a background in the BPO industry after working for the government. I went into the BPO industry and I learned really rapidly and really early on the employee experience is the customer experience. Happy employees, happy customers. If you're an outsourced contact center piece. Beyond that, if you look at it from a security perspective, secure employees equals secure customer data. So all of that to say you have to underpin your processes to the business, make it a sales enabler, make it a business enabler. You can't be restrictive, and you have to always bear in mind the employee experience and the user acceptance piece of any process as you're developing it. Is this going to hurt? Is this going to hamper? Is this going to restrict? If the answer to any of these is yes, then you need to figure out what's the benefit. Is it tangible? Is it soft ROI, hard ROI?
I want to dovetail into your. By the way, I just want to say some really good bad ideas coming in. Not a lot of them, but
Yeah,
some
I've been
good
keeping
ones.
one eye on the side. There's some terrifyingly bad ideas.
Yeah, I kind of like Ted Barducci's one of extend job offers to attackers, no background check needed. There is some pretty good security theater in there, in that they do have some knowledge about security, I believe, these attackers. So Patrick, I want to take this to you. Talk about the /next solution, because you admit, and rightfully all business or technology company, or let me say the security vendors admit this, is that while their product solves a function, it can't exist on its own without the people in the process. So you are this very interesting layer for communications across whatever platform. Let me explain to us what the /next model is and how it works with people and process, and how that it just can't exist on its own without that.
Yeah. So I think, if you look at dissect any successful breach out there, right, it starts with, and I'm going to borrow a David Letterman piece here for a moment. Sure. It starts with the stupid human trick. If you remember that, the top 10 stupid human tricks.
By the way, little trivia for our audience. I actually auditioned for Stupid Human Tricks and went to New York and actually performed my stupid human trick. I never got picked, but I did meet the producer of David Letterman at the time. Go ahead.
Because if you think about it, I am always trying to, as a threat actor, how do I get in? And they know from a human perspective, I can trick people, right? I send them a link. Not only do I send you a link through email, I send you a link through SMS. Anywhere I can message you, I can effectively compromise you. You also can attach files like HTML. Has anyone seen these HTML voicemail type of attachments? And more recently, we've all seen the ChatGPT aspect, right? This big phenomenon. Well, if you imagine now I could take, as a threat actor, send this wire information here, or send the, change your banking account information, and I send you 1,000 different iterations of that same thing, and I automate it, and it comes at you not just daily or monthly, it comes at you hourly, or they send different iterations of it. Right. So what we focus on is how do we effectively secure those messages and effectively prevent those attacks from turning into breaches, where we use obviously AI to look at those messages, almost in many respects, turn that human into a superhuman, probably the best way I would characterize it. And I think this does go down to the process side and the people side of the equation. Right. There's all this, I think, Steve, you mentioned this, don't treat your people as adversaries, treat them as part of your security defense.
Right.
So in that context, when we detect, we find something, we'll block it. We try to make sure it never goes to that user to begin with. But we all know nothing is ever foolproof. But when we block it, we'll actually also put up a live training page. So we're effectively augmenting. Remember Memorex.
So this is part of the process right here.
Yes, 100% part of the process.
Because no matter the biggest moment of impact.
Yeah, because everyone remembers that live in the moment. You don't remember those security awareness trainings. We all know that's the reason why training fails, right? We all get that, hey, it's quarterly training. You have the same people over and over again on the top of the bulletin board. So I think, again, at its core, what we do is we effectively make that human, that superhuman, by augmenting them with AI. So we can do deep inspection. So we can basically pull out those links that are compromising. We're pulling out those natural language BEC threats, so you don't change your banking information. And we're also pulling out those files, those ransomware files, those things that if I am in Slack and I send you a message and it has an HTML file, it resolves local to your machine. We're pulling all that stuff out so you do not compromise the user. But there is that augmented process, right? We're doing that live reinforced training. And I would argue by doing that, you're also in turn educating your people. And that becomes part of the process, and it becomes part of enabling those people to become part of your security defense, as opposed to the kind of treating them as the opposition.
All right. We're going to go to our first game, but before we do, I'm just going to say that when we come back from our first game, I want to talk about the flow between vendor and customer and vendor, about how they're both learning about processes, because I know what you learn from your customers probably helps you improve your product and also advise your other customers, and vice versa. Steve, I got to assume that you're leaning on your vendors as well to help improve your process. Things to keep in mind, but let's go to our first game.
Do you know what others are thinking? On the public interest.
All right, here's the game. I'm going to warn you. So since we're playing that totally sucks, your answers are directly connected to how you're also going to play our other game, That Totally Sucks. Now, there are going to be only 4 questions here. It is extraordinarily difficult to get all 4 correct. I'm going to ask our producers, and you can text in the public chat here, has any of our guests ever actually gotten 4 correct? Because it is super tough on this game to get all 4 correct. I don't know. Maybe we have had one gotten all 4 correct, but it ain't easy. I'll just say that.
Has anybody ever got all 4 wrong?
Dwayne, but he wasn't a guest at the time, was he? Our audience has gotten 4 correct, but I'm more interested in this. All right, so here's how it works. Most average monthly search queries, and this is not in cybersecurity, this is in all of Google altogether. What gets more queries, A, process, or B, technology? Steve, Patrick, what do you think?
Guess I'll go first.
Patrick's not willing to jump in.
I'm going. I'm going to have to go technology.
Okay, technology, and Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's technology as well.
All right.
Silver bullet.
Here we go.
probably
And
gonna
the
be
correct
wrong,
answer is
Steve.
yes, technology,
Probably.
more than 2-1 right there. Very good. Okay, 1-1. Both of you doing very well. Let's go to the next one. All right. What gets more search queries, best practices or good advice? What do you think?
Steve, I'm letting you go first here.
I think I'm going to go with best practices. Everybody knows you get your good advice from Reddit.
I thought it came from Twitter, Steve. Let's go. Yeah, I'm going to have to go best practices as well.
Okay, 2 are both going for C, and the correct answer
Probably
is
good advice.
yes, like a 4-1 margin. That's huge. All right, okay. Let's go. So 2-2. You both are doing extremely well. All right, communication breakdown or not listening.
Aren't they both the same? No.
Well, what are they searching more for? That's the question.
Isn't it my boyfriend's not listening to me? And
I have to go not listening. This is
I'm going the same. This is.
All right.
We're gonna have to divert paths at some point.
I know,
Well, we're going to see what happens.
Relationship
Oh, no,
advice.
communication breakdown wins. You broke your streak there. So it's still 2-2 for both of you.
Isn't that a song? A communication breakdown? I can't remember who sang that.
I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe everyone in our audience knows. All right, last one. This one, Patrick. This is right up your alley because it is what your product covers for. Smishing or vishing. What do you think's more popular? Just in searches.
Yeah, this is interesting because smishing is the most second attack vector that we see. So I'm going to have to go smishing.
Smishing, what do you think?
Are they searching for vishing because they have no idea what it means, though? That's where I'm. Okay. I'm going to go with vishing.
Okay, so you're splitting.
Yeah.
Patrick is taking smishing, and Steve takes vishing, and the correct answer is vishing, which surprised me too. Yes, not by a lot, just by a little bit
Just
there. All right.
No idea what vishing is.
So 3-2, Patrick. That means when we play That Totally Sucks, you're going to have to pick one extra one in our game, and you will see that.
Thanks, Steve.
Patrick.
Sorry, brother. I'm trying.
See, we set that up beforehand, right, Steve?
Totally.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
All right. So here's my question. I'll start with you, Steve, on this one. Do you, and I'm going to ask sort of both ways, do you lean on your security vendors for advice on how best to handle this in terms of your people and process? Like, and again, this could be any security product, whatsoever you use. So you can think of any example. Do you lean on them? And then vice versa, do you give them feedback like, hey, just, we've been using this product this way and we found it best to do it like this? What's been your experience?
Transparency. Absolutely transparency. And I'll get to David Peach's comment shortly because it leads itself in here. Transparency, because you have to engage with your vendor as a partner. I'm not looking for a product. I'm not looking for a sale. I'm looking for a partner. And that goes all the way back to my consultancy days. You don't try and land a customer for today. You'll make a sale You land a customer, you make a friend, you'll have a customer for life. Look at it from a partnership perspective, because having been through 2 breaches in my career, significant breaches, and globally disruptive events like the Arab Spring and the Fukushima nuclear disaster, which we ran crisis management for, when the SHTF, see, I'm trying not to swear, when the brown stuff hits the whirly thing, you have to be able to count on your vendors to pull you out of the brown stuff, as much as you count on them for trying to prevent you from getting into the brown stuff.
Right, but what I'm also thinking about is, are there little tweaks that you have done to your process that's improved security, and then in turn return that back to the vendors saying, advise this to your other customers too?
Yep, it's a
two-way. Can you give me any example of this?
So we were looking, and we partnered with a global technology reseller. And I have done for 15 years. I know their team really well, to provide leading insights and leading advice when we have a problem to solve. For example, came into the company I'm in now, looking at building a foundational, global enterprise-wide security program. Can't do that. No foundational IT program, no fundamental blocking and tackling. Where are my assets so that I can secure them? So go to your partners. Hey, what are you seeing out there? They brought a vendor to me and said, you need to talk to these guys. I said, I've talked to those guys 5 years ago. They're too expensive. Can't use them. Don't see the benefit. Don't see the value add. They've changed. Go talk to them again. I did. 5 minutes into that conversation, I stopped the sales guy and said, I get it. Where do I sign? It's a done deal, because I saw that they could solve my problem. And it was through that partnership and through that back and forth with that vendor relationship to say, got a problem here. What are you guys seeing out there? You're shifting a lot more stuff than I am. You're platform agnostic, vendor agnostic. You've no tie-ins. What have you got that can solve my issue, that can help me move forwards? And be open to new ideas. I didn't go in with blinkers of, I can't touch this vendor. Talked to them 5 years ago. They're crap. They're not getting my market. They're enterprise class. I'm now SMB. I'm emerging market. They brought them to the table. They came. They brought their A game, and they brought pricing flexibility as well. Really important. Really, really important. Similarly, we had another engagement where a long time ago, I was 60,000 people all around the globe, and a vendor came in and said, yeah, we price per head count. I'm like, wow, that's going to make it really expensive for 60,000 people. And yet we have very little technology footprint, because as an outsourcer, we use our clients' tools and technology. So I got 60,000 heads. I don't have 60,000 pieces of equipment. They came to the table and they were hungry for the business, and they readjusted their entire pricing model for us, which helped them gain a foothold in the industry, because they were like, well, we can't pitch to BPOs under this licensing model. So let's have a BPO specific licensing model where the technology footprint is lower, but the heartbeat, the pulse that sits in a chair is higher. Change the game. Back and forth, partnership, provide that leading insight, be transparent and honest with your vendors.
All right. Quickly, I do want to mention that our poll is up for the bad idea. Those were the security theories. We have about 8 or 9 bad ideas that were really, really good. So please get your votes in for that now. And then I do also want to mention, if you have not registered for next week's Super Cyber Friday, please do that. You're automatically entered into our raffle to win an awesome fleece, of which that person who's unfortunately the name that eludes me right now has actually won. Patrick, I want to ask pretty much the same question I was asking Steve, but I want to really isolate it to, they gave you feedback as to how they were using your product, and your product changed as a result of the feedback, meaning that, it would work better in our situation if it did this kind of a thing. I got to assume all product developers have this experience. Yes, Patrick?
Yeah, I said I've been around the block far too long now, right? And it's, they always say all the best product ideas come from your customers, right? And I hate saying that core aspect, but it is fundamentally true.
So give me an example of something that changed with SlashNext because of customer engagement.
I'll give you a perfect example, right? So we'll protect a user. We effectively put a bubble around a user, whether you're getting attacked through email, we protect your cloud email, or we protect your mobile, right? If you're on your mobile app and you get that link in Twitter, or if you get something in a web-based method like Slack, and you get an HTML file. So we'll protect that bubble. So on our mobile app, right, we were working with one of the CISOs, and I'll actually just throw this out there, Paul at StockX. And basically he's like, listen, I really like what you do on the mobile phone, but we got this privacy aspect we deal with our users. We were talking about before, enabling productivity. One of the things in productivity is also trust. And so in our case, they said, listen, can you create a BYOD version of that app? So basically all you do is a license, and we're going to still put that trust factor. We're going to give that user the ability to protect themselves. It'll actually also benefit personally, but we'll never report any of the events back to the mothership. So through that context, that kind of real-time feedback, we're able to effectively adapt to how the technology is used, and in turn improve the overall security posture. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, I think this comes back from the best ideas come from the users, right? And how they actually deploy. And that in turn really affects not only how we build it, but it also benefits all the other customers we work with.
Right.
And so I think you always want to have that tight feedback loop there.
Right.
Can I jump
Steve?
onto that
Sure.
just really briefly, because it echoes back, and I said I'd get to it because I think because we've gone through this a few times, but David Peach turns around and says that I may be an Iron Man fan. He may be right.
Also, I see a Wizard of Oz fan too there as well.
Yeah, I think you'll probably take away we're all movie fans here, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, you have to have something that keeps you sane. Iron Man fan, because I was always an Iron Man fan, and my family and friends bought me 3 portraits, which they're all Lego, by the way, and you join them all together, you make this big one. That was a mammoth exercise in and of itself. But the reason it's Iron Man, I never picked up on this. I like Iron Man because it's Iron Man, and Robert Downey Jr. brought so much to the platform, right? To Marvel. But one of my friends recently pointed out, when I'm evangelizing my people-centric security posture, he turned around, and I love Iron Man. My car's got War Machine written on it and all of the relevant stickers and badges and stuff. I always used to say, I'm more like War Machine. I want to be Iron Man. I want to be Tony Stark because he's rich and he's wealthy and he's powerful and he's famous and good looking. He has a lot more hair than me. Patrick, gray hair is better than nay hair, mate. So they said, but Iron Man is what you do. Iron Man's your security posture. And I stopped and I paused, and I said, and it hit home. My buddy, he's Batman. He goes by Batman. He loves Batman. I'm an Iron Man guy. I looked at this and I was like, it's exactly what Patrick's described here, because what SlashNext does is what technology should do. Tony Stark is just a guy, admittedly a rich guy, but he is augmented and turned into a superhero by technology. You take the suit away and he's just a guy, a smart,
with something
rich,
pulsing in his
handsome
chest.
guy. Right, yes. But again, without the technology, take the arc reactor away. What is he? Dead. So
There you go.
these pieces around your people are everything. Underpin them, augment them, and turn them into superheroes with technology.
And I would throw out the 6
SlashNext
million.
is Stark Industries is
There you go.
Iron Man. Have you ever
You've
seen
just been elevated
Patrick
to
and
Iron
Tony
Man status.
Stark
That's
in the
awesome,
same
Patrick.
vein?
That's phenomenal.
All right, we have
Couldn't
another
say it better.
game to play. We're getting into this. Here we go.
Oh no, that totally sucks.
All right. Here's how this works. We have a board of 12 numbers here. 11 of them have something crappy behind them. One of them has, and remind me, Aaron, who's blue and who's red? I've already forgotten who's blue and who's red here. But 11 of them have something crappy. One is good. Patrick, because you got one extra wrong, you're going to have to pick 4. Steve, you only have to pick 3. And then at the end, our audience is going to judge who has chosen the crappier environment. So, Steve is blue and Patrick is red. Okay. So, Patrick, since you have an extra one, you're going to start first. Pick a number 1 through 12.
We're going 2.
Number 2. And that is... The staff forgets everything they learned in security awareness training. And you are red, so we're going to turn you red. Hold on. Why is that not showing up? Whoops. It's done this to me before. It drives me crazy. Hold on. We're going to do this again. Hold on. We could think it. Come back. There we go. Number 2. Come on. There we go. 2, and you are red. Staff forgets everything they did in security. All right. Pick a number now, Steve, the other 11.
8. It's my lucky number.
Number 8. And you are a pile of hard drives left in the closet goes missing. That's not good. All right. Now, the audience has to determine which is worse right now. Staff forgets everything they learned in security awareness training, or a pile of hard drives goes missing. Hold on. And why is this? This drives me crazy when
hopefully there's no Bitcoin on that one.
No. Okay, here we go.
Or
I
PII.
see. I think see how I can figure this out. Okay. Now back to you, Patrick. Pick another one.
Go 7.
We're going to 7 and whoops. Come on. Why is it not? It's doing this again on me. If this craps on me, hold on. Why does this keep doing this on me? We're going to do this again. This is not good. All right. So we got 2. What was the other one?
8.
You're picking 8, and you're red. And then you're 7.
Blue. I'm good. We'll do that.
Oh, I reversed it.
That's right.
All right,
It's
now
all
we
good.
reversed it. It's blue and red now. Wait,
Red's fine.
Patrick is
You
blue
can
now.
deny
I'm
my
sorry. Aaron, change this, everything. Patrick is blue, Steve is red. Okay, you hired the CEO's son who turns out to be a toxic employee. All right, go for it, Steve.
Okay, unlucky number. We'll do with 4.
4. 4 is unlucky for you.
It is in Mandarin Chinese.
All right, I'm bailing on this game. I'm sorry. It's giving me too many problems. All right, we're bailing on the game. Forget it. We're going back to our conversation. I don't know why this is happening to me.
David, I was hoping that the closet did not have remember the hard drive that had all the Bitcoin that got buried in the dump?
Yes.
And there was something, it was billions of dollars on it. It was pretty crazy. So that would have been the worst one I would have chosen.
All right.
I'll
Well,
tell you a
this
good hard
totally
drive
sucks.
story.
I don't know why. I've had this problem before, but it's happening every single time. I got to figure what's going on, or Andrew and I will work on that before. He was the one who developed that wonderful board, which is unfortunately failing on me right now. All right. We'll play the game some other time. All right. Let's get back to our questions. We have a few questions that have come in right now. And this comes from Dustin Sachs, and this just more has to do about communications in general. And I don't think this is so horrible, Dustin Sachs, who put this one in, but let me ask, I get this from people who get their information from some other ways. You are trying to provide security advice to your staff, all right? And yet they get security advice from other locations as well. So Dustin asks, how do we as security experts and nerds enthusiasts effectively communicate cybersecurity concepts to people who are getting their information from TikTok and Wikipedia, which I don't think is truly that bad, although ironically, there is not much cybersecurity information on TikTok for that matter. But I remember I used to have these battles with people like, well, I heard such and such happened. So let's just off of that, like, how do you deal with when you're trying to provide security information, they respond with, well, I heard such and such is what you should do. And give me an example. I mean, there's tons of these, but do you run into this problem, Steve, where you're fighting some unnamed person as your combatant in security knowledge?
Yeah, I actually had that recently happen with my CEO. I did a board level review, and you've got to be good as a CISO. You have to be good at telling the story, right? And you have to, as a former stand-up comedian, you learn in my youth. You learn really quickly how to read an audience, and reading the room is important as an executive as well. But you tailor your jokes to your audience, know your audience, right?
Right.
So I simplify everything. If you can't explain something in simple terms, you're doing it wrong. You've got to throw away the acronyms, and you've got to keep it simple, straightforward, and to the point. And I sat down with my CEO, my board, and we were going through a few bits and pieces, and we went through cyber insurance. We were due to our cyber insurance renewal, and painting a good picture, telling a good story, talking about why premiums are rising all around the globe. And he threw something out there, which I will leave alone. And he gave me something which clearly came from the internet. And then you have to make a choice. As the guy that is capable, a guy or girl that is capable of turning around and saying, that's really not how it is. You got a choice of saying that to your executive leadership, or you got a choice of just moving on to the next slide. and I'm not really known for backing down from a fight. So fight or flight response, it kicks in and you go, am I going to win this perspective or not? So I corrected them on their perception that had come purely from the internet. Don't know where. Some dark corner of the internet had said something about cyber insurance and premiums and various bits and pieces. And I came in with facts. That's the important piece. It's never an opinion. Let go of the opinion. Come in with facts, verifiable facts. Opinion has no place in a board meeting with your CEO and your
I have dealt with this very issue. Like, for example, in outside of cybersecurity, people say, "Oh, all videos need to be short," and I go, "Well, the reality is, actually, the ones that get referenced more on YouTube are the ones that are longer. Believe it or not, and here are the stats." Patrick, do you deal with this issue as well in terms of, I often, with my parents, I dealt with this issue. Well, I read and such, and you're like, oh, geez, okay, well, let me explain. Like, how do you deal with this when you're fighting the knowledge of the internet?
Well, you think about it, obviously I sit on a vendor side, and we were, when you go to a potential prospect and say, hey, this can happen. Yeah. In a specific one, I actually was talking to, name not to be mentioned, but let's say, hey, you can get attacked through SMS. That'll never happen. And I've read here, and here. There's no way it's going to get through my defenses. I've got zero trust.
So this is a chronic issue you deal with.
Oh, this is a very chronic issue. And so then, much like
Steve clearly was saying, never Googled smishing.
Right. So you're constantly, at least on the vendor side, you're trying to sell. But I think we were talking about this before. I've always take this tact. You have to be this trusted vendor, even if you don't actually sell something. You want to impart trust with that particular customer. Right. There's a reason why I've had customers with me for quite a long time. So tell them the truth. And it does come back to this particular case. Hey, let's show you the facts. Let's also make it very easy to demonstrate that this stuff does come through. And then even then, you still have to make your own decision. You're still fighting. Obviously, everyone talks about disinformation, misinformation, etc. At the end of the day, you may not be successful. And in this case, I will tell you that we had that conversation 9 months before a huge breach that happened. It's all over the internet. So I'm not going to say every time it's successful, but I do think you have to come back with facts, and you have to have the ability to effectively demonstrate that value quickly.
But it's also it's like a proof, a geometric proof that you're doing, in the sense that you walk them through the process of, are we on the same page that we all agree that, bad links could actually come through an SMS? Let's just start with that. Like, first of all, we know links come through SMS. You can click on them and you can go somewhere, right? And so, if you can get them to agree to that, and it goes, okay, then what would that make that different than a bad link coming from, your email? Because you get bad links for your email, right? And they take you somewhere. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you have to kind of walk them through. And I always, when I ever dealt with this, I always saw it as a challenge. And I kind of heard this from you, Steve, as well, of this whole idea of, fight or flight. Like, no, I see this as a challenge. So I'm going to win this person over with the understanding that this is the best way to handle this. Anyways,
and
I just realized.
And in the boardroom, in the executive room, that's leading through influence. This is why you have to have your stakeholders on board, and you have to go in there from a position of trust, from a position of data, to be able to say, this is not my opinion, guys. This is 20 years of solid research, or this is what happened last week to this company. Those are the pieces which you go in and you try and empathize, and you try and keep it simple, and you try and go in there from a position of partnership. And as Patrick said, data.
I think to that point, I think the CISO job's perhaps the hardest job on the planet.
Yeah,
I say this because you're never going to be, you're only going to be in the headlines if something goes wrong, right?
But you have to have a defensible position. My job is to understand that something is going to go wrong. So how can I make sure the company and the CEO and the person that stands up in front of the press corps, how can I make sure that they have a defensible position to say, we did everything we could? And if they can defend that, then you're fine. And as long as they're transparent, Joe Sullivan comes to mind. As long as you're transparent, early, often, communications, transparency with your clients, your customers, the people impacted, don't hide it, don't brush it under the rug. Bad news doesn't age well. Those are your pieces where I think the CISO and the executive team can come out on top during those moments of bad news.
Yeah. And I was actually just going to further this, as a CISO, you almost have to be the best internal salesperson as well, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're that's where the facts matter. That's where laying out the argument, building that support. Also behind the scenes, I have to do this with my own board, right? You do this in any type of situation where you have to talk to the people, those individual stakeholders, try to go in with a plan that almost a little bit of, I've got the nod before you actually even present. I know this sounds like just baby steps and kind of type of advice, but it is very important if you're going to get a program through.
A lot of the time, that advice, right? You may think it's obvious to everyone, right? Why am I even saying it? But it's missed often.
Yeah. And even with that, you still may not be able to convince them. Again, I had one particular situation where the CISO laid it all out, said this could happen, and we need to put these mitigated risk in place. Did not happen. Big breach. Headlines in the Wall Street Journal. Half the market cap goes down. The CISO could happen to get fired because just collateral damage. And so you're not necessarily always going to have that perfect situation where you're able to guide through, but you have the facts to back it.
Risk tolerance, risk appetite. He found out really early that the risk appetite, the appetite for risk of his executives was a lot higher than he wanted it to be. How do you then lower that risk appetite to bring the controls in line? How do you collapse that bungee cord? That's a nuanced conversation.
Yeah, I was just going to add this final piece here back to this because Steve, you hit the nail on the head. You actually want to lay out those facts and be extremely transparent. Because I don't know if anyone's ever actually gone through a breach. All of a sudden, the flood of lawyers come in, and they start looking at every micro. And they almost put a set of lawyers on you as a person. And when
6 months of nonstop lawyers and underwriters, nonstop, been through that. I will do everything I can to avoid it.
When you have that transparency and you let someone know immediately, and you lay out the facts, fully defensible. Again, I know we dove in a little bit. This is perhaps the process of the board and the CISO aspect of selling to the board, but it's extremely important.
All right. Guess what? We got a call. It just came in.
Hello. Welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right. We have some horrible ideas that have come in from our audience. And some of our grand winners who really just knock it out of the park with awful ideas. And I'm going to start with you, Patrick. You're going to explain why we're going to implement this. And oh, by the way, just totally because Justin Waller asked for it. That was the sound effect that's way, way delayed when my game earlier was failing miserably. All right, this comes from Dustin Sachs, who says, and again, we're going to start with you, Patrick, and Steve. You're going to have to answer this as well. Create a process where the person who scores the most points for violating security practices becomes the CISO. Why do you want to do this? It's a good one.
No, this is actually good. It makes you think. The reason why you want to do that is because they intentionally are failing the test, and they actually.
You're convinced they're intentionally failing?
I'm convinced that they're.
But if you set that out, actually, let me just say, pause you for a second. If you let everyone know that's going to happen, yes, you could become the CISO by doing that. So that's a good point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So again, just building upon that, that person's intentionally failing this because they actually know the correct answer. So therefore, they are already the smartest person from a security perspective in the company, and that's what means that's why they should become the CISO here.
Yes. Good answer. All right, Steve, why are you doing this?
I believe that you get the most input, you get the most results, the most positive results from gamifying what you're trying to do. So if it's security awareness, just as an example, if it's security awareness and security practices, you gamify that, you gamify the adoption, you set high score boards, you play the departments against each other, like HR is scoring really, really, really high, etc.
But the companies already do this, but they don't do it for the one who fails the
No,
most.
but that's where they're missing the trick, because that's where you make the person who's the worst, the lowest score, because gamifying it, you have high scores and low scores. The lowest score gets promoted to the highest position. I'm an advocate
So
for
it's
that.
kind of like a penalty. Sorry, now you're the CISO.
Because then they have to wear the hat instead of you for when that breach happens.
And then you can relieve yourself of your duties.
Oh,
Phew,
good.
I can take the day off.
I'll take it one step further. They become the CISO. I'll become whatever they are. And then when we hit that performance targets at the end of the year, we'll see who's got the most.
It's like, isn't this the whole premise behind Boxing Day?
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
I love it.
And by the way, I was just going to add, that's the reason why I have a 20-person fantasy football league. Whoever's the worst becomes the commissioner the next year. So it's actually almost the same type of psychology here, Steve.
There you go.
Right?
I like
the
it.
worst gets to be the best.
Exactly.
All right, let's see the second one. Here we go. Hold it. Wait. All right, here we go. This comes from Brian Colt. Send all internet traffic through a proxy that doesn't have any rules configured. At least you can say you have a proxy filtering platform. I'm starting with you, Steve, on this one. Why do you want to do this?
Why wouldn't you send all internet traffic through an open proxy? I mean, the whole point is you don't want to stop the business. You want to allow business to continue. You don't want to stop anything, especially if you're in the business of maybe porn, gambling, advertising things on the dark web. You want that to go through, but you want to at least log it and see that it's happening. So you want to see who's surfing what so that you can maybe then stop swiping right on Tinder and you know where your next date is. That's definitely where you want to go.
I'm going to give you both.
Sir, yes, sir. Sir, no, sir.
Because I don't know if I'm fully buying this. Patrick, why do you want to do this? Send all internet traffic through a proxy that doesn't have any rules configured. At least you can say you have a proxy filtering platform.
Because you've done such an effective job at security awareness training, no matter what you let through,
Whoa,
you're never going to get compromised.
All right, I'm giving it to Patrick. There you go. I like that answer. Good answer. All right. By the way, Dave did ask. David has a. I'm going to guess this is David Peach. He does want to know if you can tell us some dad jokes, being that you have the mug that you've advertised so often on the show.
Of course, you always have to have the everyone's probably heard this. What's Forrest Gump's password?
I don't know.
One Forrest one. Oh, come on. Bump, bump.
There you go.
There you go.
That is an awful joke.
It is.
I will
awful.
agree with that. All right, get your questions in. Let me go to some of my questions here. This is the premise we have not brought up, and that is attackers all understand we have a process. They understand we have some defense systems in place. Their job is to break that system we have in place. How do you sort of communicate and help people build their defenses with that basic understanding of, like, attackers aren't stupid. They know we got something, and their goal is to break the thing you do. So when you see people using these sort of mechanics to, like, oh, just help me out here kind of thing, whatever it is, or, whatever the phishing attempt is, that understand that this is part of the effort. How do you communicate this, and what are your efforts around that, Patrick?
Yeah, so I'm going to pull back for just a moment here and say, number one, we've talked a lot about process, and you have to incorporate training, but training of itself doesn't work. That's the reason why you have a significant number of breaches. If you look at where dollars are spent in cyber, they're spent on network, number one, network security, web security, number two, identity, number three, endpoint, number four. Some changes a little bit here and there. And about 3% of a dollar is spent on, quote, human security. It's typically around the security awareness training. The threat actors know where the, quote, open holes are. The open holes are the people. And they also know, based off the things I have available to me as a threat actor, I have AI, I have automation. I also have all these open services out there. Google has free services. Amazon's got free services. Microsoft. So if you think, reason why I'm highlighting that, if I've got this mix of, I can launch an attack off of Microsoft, which is a trusted domain, or Google, I'm now going to bypass a lot of the tools that were put in place. It's also going to bypass that training that says, hey, look for joebadguy.com. Don't go there. So I've got to trust in Microsoft. I'm going to borrow again the latest headlines. I've now used ChatGPT to basically spawn something. And I've tied that through the API to an email list, so I know who you are. I'm going to then launch that attack through automation, and then I'm going to test it, right? I'm going to send it through email. I'm going to send it through SMS. I'm going to send it through WhatsApp, and I'm going to start testing these things. And so this is exactly what we're seeing right now, by the way. And so I think with that, you cannot solely rely on training and the people to be your defense, right? You want to augment those people. That's why I like to say, again, back to this point, Stephen couldn't have said it better, put that Tony Stark Iron Man piece around, that suit around that user. Because I think if you don't do that, right, we're going to continue to see these breaches. I would argue you need to take that 3% investment and borrow it from your other areas and increase that to 15%. Because again, you have to ask yourself the question: if I had huge increase in cybersecurity spending, why have I had this huge increase in breaches? Right? Just ask that simple question. The reason for that is the human side of this equation. They know the threat actors know it. They're going to continue to attack them. And I'll take it one step further. They also know, again, that I have some defense around email, but I have wide open areas, not just in my other business channels of communication. I've got them in those personal side. I'll close with this, right? Even Cisco, this is a widely publicized breach. This was talked about at Black Hat. All their security tools that they sell out, plus their internal defenses, yet they did not cover a personal Gmail account of an employee. They got phished, right? Stole credentials. They had implemented FIDO. Right everyone says, well, I'll stop all this stuff through multi-factor authentication. No, they actually co-opted that. They took those credentials, hijacked the browser, backdoor the network. Voila, you've got obviously a breach.
Because I think the key piece I'd add to that as well is to go back to what David said at the start, which I think is a bit of a misnomer, which is where you're going, Patrick, which is they're not trying to break your technology controls. They're trying to bypass them.
They're trying to bypass the holes. I use a house analogy, right? People think they protect the front door. They've got the windows. They put the alarm systems everywhere. I hate calling them, but they're rats, right? They will get through any little hole that you have. And that main hole you have are your people. And that's the reason why you want to augment them. Don't treat them as adversaries, but augment them. Use what you can in AI to fight AI effectively is kind of my message here.
Okay. And the reason that I think most of those pieces, like you said, that everybody's investing and they continue to invest in networks, firewalls, all of those perimeter level IT controls is because a lot of CISOs, they report up through the IT chain. The CIO is a more mature executive role than the CISO. We're relatively young and new to the boardroom, to the executive table. And as such, when you have a CISO that reports into a CIO, those competing priorities mean that the CIO is going to fall back on what they know. They're going to fall back on the tried and trusted controls of throw up a firewall, throw up a perimeter defense, and we're good on the back end. But just like you said, it's the cell phones that are getting breached because they know you don't necessarily have the same controls on your cell phone that you do on your endpoints. They're just bypassing it. They're falling back on. That's why security awareness, the people-centric security model, isn't necessarily invested in. It's because your CIO is a robot and they're focused on technology or the digital transformation and not necessarily the human transformation.
All right. I do want to mention some of the 10% tips we have here. Brian Colt said, spend time with business units to better understand their processes and offer recommendations for security improvements. That's a classic right there. We hear this one all the time. Also, use IA, I'm assuming AI, to write your phishing emails for internal phishing campaigns, Mariano. And also, Dustin suggested base security on data and a balance between reasonable and prohibitive, for that matter. All right, hang tight for just a second. I want to wrap up our give sort of the closing information here. By the way, if you have not registered for next week's, what does it say, Was what 1017? That is wrong. How did I say that? It should be 0110. Join us Friday. That's my fault. 1017. It's January 10th. It's next week's 23. Hacking your security program. I don't know how the hell I wrote 1017 there. My fault. 110 or 210. I'm sorry. Thank you. February 10th. Not because today's February 3rd. We're not going back in time. February 3rd. I don't know how the heck that happened, but February 3rd. Go ahead and click on that now. It is February 3rd. Or it's February 3rd now. It'll be February 10th. Oh, my God. My head's a mess here. See, next show, February 10th, 2023. I got it right here. Click that darn link right there because it's going to change in just a second. An hour of critical thinking, what you should do next to improve your security posture. I'll register early. Guess what? I figured out who did win this week. It is Rick Bosworth of SentinelOne. He won the Awesome CISO Series Fleece. So if you would like to win an Awesome CISO Series Fleece, why don't you just register now? Click it because it's going to change very soon. Huge thanks to Patrick's company /Next for sponsoring this very episode of Super Cyber Friday. We greatly appreciate it. They've been a phenomenal sponsor of the CISO series. We love having them on board. So thank you very much. And starting in 90 minutes, or actually 95 minutes from now, is Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review. We have David Nolan, the VP of Enterprise Risk and CISO for the Aaron's Company. That will be on our YouTube channel. So just go to youtube.com/CISO series, or click on the events page for the link, or find our YouTube channel by clicking the link there. Anyway, bazillion ways to figure that out. All right, stick around for the meetup. Aaron, you can now change the link at the bottom for our meetup. There it is. You can click on it at any time. For those of you who are watching, please join our meetup. We would love to have you at our meetup, especially those of you who have never been. Come, chat with us. It's a great chance to meet your fellow colleagues. All right, and tell your friends to join us. We do this every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, at 10 a.m. Pacific. Most Fridays, if I'm not available or it's a holiday weekend, we avoid those. But next Friday, which will be February 10th, if you didn't get a chance to click the link below, you can always go to our page and click on events and see the upcoming events and register there. All right. Want to sponsor Super Cyber Friday? We have some available in March. Just email me at david@cisoseries.com. All right. What do we have? We have just 2.5 minutes left. So I'm going to start with you, Patrick. Any final offer you would like to give to our audience about /Next, or any closing advice on our discussion today? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we talked about this before about kind of enabling with data. So I've just throw this out to the audience. We just replaced a huge SEG environment, 185,000 users, mailboxes. We onboarded those over a weekend. The net takeaway here, how we basically prove value is we have basically a real-time email threat observability that you can put in place. Literally takes 5 minutes for your Microsoft 365 environment. Put it in place. It's complimentary. We effectively see over a 30-day period how well you're attacked or not attacked. In many respects, I could say you're going to find a lot of things, even if you have Proofpoint, even if you have Mimecast, or you want to just have the Microsoft 365 stack. Put this in place, and this is your opportunity to see what's coming through the front door. It won't see what's coming on all the other areas, but it'll see what's coming through the front door.
All right. All right. Steve, I'm going to you as you're typing into the chat room right now.
In the security conversation where we're talking about clicking links, Daniel's sending one in the chat. It's great. Click that if you dare.
So any last thoughts here? I just literally have about 30 seconds for you as well. Any last thoughts? Are you hiring? Anything like that? What do you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's nonstop. The industry is great. Get out there, promote the community. The cybersecurity community is an incredible community that all pulls together because we're all in the same fight. Go out, promote the community. I'm here with David Spark. Obviously, I'm wearing a T-shirt that says Spark on it.
It does. It's Spark Journey. I like that.
Spark a Journey from the Diana Initiative. The Diana Initiative is an organization that promotes women in security and cybersecurity. Get out there.
And they rightfully named it after me. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Well, I want to thank Steve Hindle. I want to thank Patrick /Next. Check them out. It's pretty darn cool what they're doing. and we greatly appreciate your sponsoring us. And thanks, Aaron and Andrew, for producing in the background. And thank you. Please click the link at the bottom of the screen. Join us in the meetup. We're doing it right now. Click that link. Click it. Click it now. Bye. Take us out, Aaron.